Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1 for this, our reactions to F1 Academy at the Singapore Grand Prix. Before we get into any of this, make sure you like and subscribe, and a huge shout out to our members, Dakota, LaJoyous James, Robin Myers and Cinnamon Strudel. Let's get into this though. It was an interesting one. I think not the greatest F1 Academy race ever, but still a pretty good one. But before we do talk about the race itself, we need to talk about the wild card. Now, for those who are unfamiliar, in F1 Academy, they have the wild card, which is a driver who can enter a race weekend for a one-off. They don't compete in the whole season, they just compete in a single race. Now, we had the first wild card back in Saudi Arabia, when a Saudi Arabian driver took part in the race weekend. The next wild card was in Miami, when an American driver took part in the race weekend. We had one last time out at the Dutch Grand Prix, when a Dutch driver took part in the race weekend. So here we are in Singapore, and guess where the wild card driver is from? Pontypridd, South Wales. Wonderful stuff. Happy to see some Welsh reputation and representation on our screens here in F1 Academy. Wonderful thing here. I couldn't believe it. It was unbelievable. Ella Lloyd was her name, and she did a fantastic job in F1 Academy this weekend. Hopefully we'll see more of her in the future. I thought she was absolutely fantastic. And this gives me the wonderful opportunity to show off some of my incredibly basic Welsh language skills. Y ras yn 5 munud wedi 8 yn y dydd Sadwrn yn y Gymru. Mae'r tywydd yn y Singapore yn braf ond 3 bwyff. Diolch yn fawr. Shall we talk about some racing? Because it was Abbi pulling on pole for race 1, Maya Vug alongside her. And before we even get started, Bianca Bustamante has an issue here. So she gives us a wave to tell us that she has an issue. We get an extra formation lap. And the rule is, if you cause an extra formation lap, you have to then start from the pit lane, which she doesn't do. She goes to the grid. She does receive a penalty for this, a 10-second stop-and-go penalty. A few things here. Firstly, whatever issue she had didn't seem to be too big of an issue because she got away quite well. But, looking at what happened in Baku in the Formula 2 last time out, if you have an issue, it's best to say rather than to have an issue on the grid and someone going to the back of you. So I understand why she waved that off. But from there, firstly, she should know that you need to go to the pit lane. But secondly, if she doesn't, her engineer should be telling her you need to go to the pit lane. And this isn't the first time this has happened in F1 Academy, where a driver has either not known something or made a mistake, and their engineer just hasn't told them. If you remember back to our first race weekend in Saudi Arabia for F1 Academy, there was the whole thing when Dorian Pan won and then didn't know the race was over and just kept on going, and that resulted in her having a penalty and losing that race win, and the engineer just kind of watched her do it. It's like, what are we doing here? So, the drivers should know, but even if they don't know, the engineers should tell them. Even if they do know, the engineers should tell them anyway. We see that in F1 all the time, when even if it's something incredibly obvious to do, the engineer still tells them just to make sure, so there's little things here that you go, why isn't this being done? But anyway, Bustamante would get a 10-second stop-and-go penalty here for lining up on the grid when she should have been in the pit lane. As we actually start the race proper, though, it's a good getaway from Abbi Pulling, who goes away quite well. Further back, Chloe Chambers locks up under pressure from Ella Lloyd. That was a battle for P5. As we go further into the race, De House spins in turn 1. That was on lap 6. And then Lloyd and Pan are investigated for a false start. Now we see a quick replay of this here, and we only see a replay of Dorian Pan's start, and when we see the replay, they cover up the start lights with the message saying that she got a penalty. So we can't actually see if she jumped the start or not, and we don't actually see a replay of Ella Lloyd's start at all. There is so many broadcast mistakes this weekend. I have no idea what's going on. We'll get into a huge one later on in race 2, but here's just a simple one. You know, when we're showing a replay of a false start, we need to be able to see the lights to tell if it's a false start or not. So, who knows what happened here. Anyway, both of them get a 5-second penalty, which is not good for Ella Lloyd, because she was, I believe, 6th at this time. This would push her down quite a bit. Meanwhile, Dorian Pan was in 3rd place, with Leah Block 4.2 seconds off the back of her. Leah Block, who, you know, hasn't had the greatest season so far. I think people were expecting a little bit better from her. Hasn't been on the podium thus far this year. Here's a great opportunity for her in the dying moments of this race with this Dorian Pan penalty. But as we cross the line, Abbi Pulling wins with ease here in race number 1. Maya Vug is P2. Dorian Pan sets the fastest lap on the final lap to increase her gap between her and Leah Block to 5.2 seconds. Leah Block in 4th place, missing out on that first podium by 0.2 seconds. Chloe Chambers is 5th. Hamna Al-Khabaisi 6th. Marty is 7th. Strider is 8th. Ella Lloyd finishes 6th on the road, but with that penalty for the false start, gets pushed down to 9th. Still a very good outing for the wildcard driver. And Tina Houseman gets 1 point in 10th. Let's move on to race number 2. And once again here, it is Abbi Pulling on pole position, but this time Dorian Pan is alongside. Insert usual rant on how they should do the grids the same as F2 and F3 to make for more interesting racing, which I say every time. Meanwhile, let's go to the actual race itself. And at the start, Abbi Pulling has a good start, keeps the lead. Meanwhile, the best start was from Maya Vug, who takes P2 from Dorian Pan. There's a fantastic battle between the two of them for P2 around the first lap. Leah Block getting involved in that as well. Some fantastic defensive and attacking driving from everyone involved there. On lap 2, we see Chloe Chambers go down the inside of Bianca Bustamante. And now, here is when the biggest broadcasting mishap error happens. So, we see Bianca Bustamante go into a spin. As that happens, they decide to show a replay of the race start. Now, obviously, they would have had that replay of the race start queued up, and they go, okay, well, let's play it now. They obviously don't know that Bustamante is going to spin. But if you are playing a replay, and just before you hit the replay button, someone spins, I think the automatic thing should be, get the replay off the screen, show us the thing that is happening right now, which is what they didn't do. Instead, they showed us all the replays of the start. I think they should just cancel the replay, show us the spin. Because what happened here, we see Bustamante go into the spin, we're then in the replay, and then during the replay, it pops up at the top, safety car has been deployed. And we're just thinking, oh my god, what has happened here? Why are we watching this race start replay? The safety car's out, there's been some kind of huge crash, what has happened? So that wasn't great from a broadcasting perspective, but then from just a stewarding perspective, this whole thing was ridiculous. So Bianca Bustamante has a spin, she stops the car, and they release the safety car for this. She didn't hit the wall, the car was just stopped. They released the safety car, and then Bustamante just gets going again and carries on. So the safety car was out for like 1 lap, neutralising everything. The most pointless safety car I think I've ever seen. So that was... the broadcasting side was bad. The safety car side was bad. Everything about this was bad. Meanwhile, let's restart the race here. It was an okay getaway for Abbi Pulling. She keeps the lead, but Maya Vug was not too far behind her. Meanwhile, further down, there's a huge battle behind Hamna Al-Khabaisi. About 4 cars there, all fighting around her. There's contact between Bustamante and Tina Houseman, which results in a 10-second penalty for Houseman. And Bustamante's bad weekend just gets worse and worse and worse. We'll see some good stuff here from Chloe Chambers. I like her a lot. She was big in the mirrors of Schreiner, who I always pronounce the name of wrong. Finally gets past. Really good move from there. That was for P8 on lap 11. As we cross the line, Abbi Pulling wins again with absolute ease. It's a repeat of the podium as well. Maya Vug in P2, Dorian Pan P3, repeat of the top 4 as well, because Leah Block was 4th. Was it a repeat of the entire top 5? No, it wasn't. Chloe Chambers was 5th in race 1. It was Marty 5th here. Hannah Alcabasi 6th. Ella Lloyd again getting points here in P7. Chloe Chambers in 8th. Schreiner in 9th. And De House in 10th, picking up that final point. So there you go. That is F1 Academy for this week. Only 2 F1 Academy races left. One in Qatar, then at Abu Dhabi as well. It's looking like Abbi Pulling is running away with this championship, which is a mad thing to say after race 1, where it seemed like Dorian Pan was going to be one of the most dominant drivers we've ever seen. But Abbi Pulling has just turned it round, and since Miami, no one's been able to touch her. She's been absolutely incredible. My complaints about the series are still the same as they ever were. The cars aren't fast enough. They're not advanced enough. They need to have some kind of DRS as well, especially at a track like this. The qualifying is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. They need to change that for next year. Just go to F2, F3. Give us the reverse grids, because, the races in F1 Academy aren't great. Like this weekend, there were some interesting things. I mean, when you're doing 11 or 12 laps around Singapore, it's not great. This weekend was not a good advertisement for F1 Academy. But if you give us a sprint race, 11 laps, where Abbi Pulling is starting 10th and has to fight through everyone, I mean, that's instantly better than what we have now. And that's what F2 does, and that's what F3 does. Quite frankly, they should just be in Formula 3 cars. Give them Formula 3 cars, put the reverse grid on for the sprint race. Instantly much more entertaining than what we have now. And I think it's doing a disservice as well, because when we watch F2 and F3, and it's so exciting all the time, especially those sprint races where people are out of position, and then we turn on F1 Academy, and it's not as good, there will be members of the audience who go, oh, it's not as good because women are racing. And that's not the reason. It's not as good because the cars are dreadful and the format is wrong. And it's just, you're already putting these women down before anything has happened. This needs to be seriously looked at and fixed for next year, because there has been so many stumbling blocks with this already. With the whole season last year not being broadcast, to the point that I think most people think this is the first season of F1 Academy when it's not, it's the second. Then we broadcast it, and everything is wrong. There's been so many mistakes already, and we can't have any more. So we need to fix all of this for next season immediately. There needs to be stuff put in place straight away. Also, give a full-time seat to Ella Lloyd. Give a full-time seat to, was it Nina Gademan from the Dutch Grand Prix with the wildcard? She was fantastic. There is ways to fix this, and hopefully they will. As for now, that has been F1 Academy. I will see you next time. Oh yeah, F1's on later, innit? I'll see you for that. Until then, though, have a good one. Goodbye.